tempted. I was tempted. Tempted by your smile. I was tempted. And for a little while I was certain that I will be the one to change you, and you will be mine. You will be.
Hi. If you remember, once I told you about traveling around Europe by car. About a year ago I drove over 10,000 kilometers in my little turbo car across 7 or 8 European countries, and I absolutely love it. But exactly 1 year later I decided to step it up a notch, and this time I wanted to figure out what it's like to travel across Europe on a private plane. That's probably what most of you imagine when you hear in private plane. And we're not talking about business jets now, because it's a different thing that requires lots of money. Instead, we're talking about a simple, light aircraft. And what's best is that you don't even need to buy one here in Europe. You can just rent it. The main thing is to find someone to fly it. And you won't believe it, but I found one. It's time to introduce you guys to someone. Our story begins in a Swiss village called Grindel, an hour away from Basel. It's a tiny place with 500 residents in the Jura Mountains. It's a typical little Swiss village where the air is clean and everyone knows each other. Awesome! And here lives our person who can fly a plane. Meet Andrew, the guy who invited me to come here. Andrew works for a large pharma company, but in his spare time he's a pilot with 10 years of experience. He loves to do it for fun or takes his friends and family for a ride, and it's just a hobby that became a part of his life and probably his whole family, because Valeria and his kids love the skies too. This brings us to the Malaus-Habsheim Aerodrome in France, some 5 kilometers from the Swiss border. It's our starting point. The airfield isn't too small. There are several hangars with aircraft and 15 or so air clubs where people can rent planes and learn to fly. How long did you learn to fly?
Around half a year.
And that's it?
Yep, and that's quite long. For those who want to do it really quick, there's a fast-track course in Florida that takes 2 weeks at most.
You mean it's just like getting a driving license?
Yeah, that's right. For example, it takes around 40 hours to get a Swiss driver's license, and the pilot's license takes 45 hours.
Turns out that getting a pilot license doesn't take that long, and as a result, air clubs are packed with people of all ages. This girl must be around 18 years old, and she is already preparing for next training flight. Her mom's sitting right behind her, just in case. And this little aircraft is being controlled by Andrew's German friend Andreas.
We took a plane, went on a business trip to the islands one weekend, and he loved it.
Was it his first time?
Yeah, it was. It was his first time in a general aviation plane. And he loved it to such an extent that he went out and bought a kit plane on the internet.
Wait a second, is that like DIY plane?
Correct. Just like with IKEA. It comes in boxes, and then you assemble it.
Really?
Yep.
Is it even legal?
You bet, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, here you can see a plane that was ordered online and assembled by hand.
I think we got 6 boxes delivered. Some came from the Ukraine, some other parts from France. The owner of the company sits in the UK, and it all fit together, surprisingly.
And it took 2 years for Andreas' father to assemble this beast.
It's a kit plane, so yes, you buy all the individual parts and then you put it together, like Lego, yes, like Lego.
The plane operates just fine, but it's obvious that the materials are quite cheap. I guess that's why there is a parachute installed on it, just in case. You have a parachute?
Yes, and here, if you pull out this lever here, 50 centimeters, it could come out right now if you wanted.
No, I don't want. The Aero Club is full of planes. What's interesting is that they aren't just used for leisure, but also as a real means of transport that you can use to travel. This is what the air traffic over Europe looks like, despite the pandemic. Half of this flow is small planes, and light aircraft are popular for many reasons. France alone has more than 400 registered airfields, thousands of landing strips for ultralight planes, plus highly developed infrastructure, like aeroclubs, restaurants and interesting places. And of course, we plan to visit and film all of it. This is our plan. We fly out of Habsheim, then over half of France, reach Avignon, the Côte d'Azur, then we fly across the sea and finally get to the island of Corsica. We have 6 days and a French Robin 400, 4-seater, which we booked beforehand. The cool thing about this plane is that it's super simple. It has no electronics, no hydraulics, there are cables instead of them, and even flaps are extended like using a handbrake. That's supposed to make the plane safe, but we'll see about that. To rent this plane you need a pilot license and be a member of the Aero Club. The rent itself costs around 160 euros per hour. I should say that unlike car rentals with payment per day, here you pay by hours, but the important thing is that only the flight hours are calculated. Which means that you don't pay when the aircraft is on the ground, only when the engine is on and the propeller rotating. Here's the money calculator, by the way. What now? We rented the plane and can now just leave without informing anybody?
Yep, I have the keys. Let's go.
So it's pure math. If you have a pilot's license or are about to get one, you will save a lot of money on your flights. But what to do with that free money? Today's video sponsor Masterworks and I have the answer to that question. They've already sold over 45 million worth of assets, distributing the net proceeds right to everyday investors. Even through COVID, inflation and now, as costs stay high. Because Masterworks is the only one platform in the world allowing you to invest in multi-million-dollar blue-chip art without needing millions. Masterworks allows you to invest in shares of paintings from legends like Picasso, Basquiat and Banksy. And if the piece sells for a profit, you get a return. So far, each of Masterworks' 13 sales has delivered positive returns to their investors. Now the Masterworks has to control the pace of sign-ups, so there is a waitlist. But my subscribers can skip the waitlist and start investing right now at the link in the description. This is all our stuff, and our main piece of luggage is not backpacks and tents, but this small tank on the right. It is filled with oil.
Engines consume oil, run on leaded avgas, so we need to take some extra oil. You know, so we don't run out.
Man, you'll keep it under control, right?
Sure, but try to remind me.
We've got lots of stuff packed, and the question is where to squeeze it in. Unlike a car with a proper trunk, this place has only a small shelf and 2 free back seats, since it's just for the 2 of us. There's not a lot of space here, but at least there is some. Man, this is heavy. A car could just drive up the gas pump, but with a light aircraft it's not that simple. By the way, what's the consumption of this vehicle?
They say it's 33 liters.
Per hour?
If you fly at 220 to 240 kilometers per hour.
After a quick conversion to metrics for cars, we get about 15 to 16 liters per 100 kilometers, which is roughly comparable to a large SUV. Since this is a rented plane, how do you make sure that it wasn't trashed by the previous club member? Well, there is a special technical journal for that, where every pilot logs in their observation. Plus, you visually inspect the aircraft before every flight to ensure everything is tip-top. Well, we are rushing to pack and fly off because the weather is getting worse and we risk getting caught in a storm, which is a worst-case scenario. Although, I have tons of questions, I'll leave them for our flight. Let's go! What can I say? Our European trip, no wait, our European private plane trip is kicking off right now. We are off the ground, so let me share my first impressions. The first and coolest thing is that this plane flies pretty low, and unlike passenger airlines, where you feel like staring at Google Maps while looking out of the window, with this plane you get to see the towns you fly over, feeling the presence of it all. At times you can even follow the terrain and be lower than some land objects. This is awesome. And here goes the logical question: how do we know where to fly? Andrew has a special navigation app for that, like Waze, but for planes, where you make a route and these marks tell you how long it takes to get somewhere, 2, 5 or 10 minutes respectively. I would love to tell you more, but we hit a storm front after all, and such discomfort made it slightly hard to talk. Everything is okay though, we landed safely. Alright, this is our first stop, and we're in Burgundy. We landed on a small airfield called St. George, and there you can even see vineyards right at the end of the runway. That's Burgundy for you. Right behind the aircraft parking, there is also a small air club with a tiny restaurant where we decided to head first. It's France, so it's not hard to guess what's in the bottles and what the people were up to. This is a typical aero club where pilots have some rest after flights, and other travelers, like us, park their aircraft and then join the party. They drink, meet and chat. The atmosphere is great, so we got quickly sucked in too. Guys, it wouldn't be a Burgundy if apart from the wine, there wasn't a castle within 1 kilometer. It's just statistics. And of course, there is one. Yep. Here's just an average 16th century castle where, for example, Empress of the French and Napoleon's first wife Josephine de Beauharnais, or something like that, would stop by. The best part about it is that it's only 300 meters from the airfield. See? Our plane parked right there. This isn't all though. Nowadays, the castle operates as a hotel and you can stay here for a night. Room prices range from 120 to around 350 euros. 2 minutes from the airport. What? Unfortunately, the hotel was fully booked, so we packed up our luggage and the guys from the air club brought us to a budget hotel not far from there. And that's how our first day went. We didn't get to try Burgundy wine yesterday, but we still have a chance to catch up on it in Avignon, and off to Provence we go. To be honest, before this trip, I always thought that flying implied plotting an official route and reporting to some air traffic control about your path, but in reality, it's much more simple. If you fly within one European country, you just fly wherever you want to. It gives you an ever-present sense of freedom. So, you can just change your route in flight, right?
Correct.
If I tell you that I would like to get closer to those beautiful houses, which aren't actually that beautiful...
Yep, let's go see them. Maybe they are beautiful.
No, I was joking. Another factor worth mentioning is speed. Listen, since we're flying so close to the road right now, I wonder how much faster we move compared to a car and how much quicker we can get to places by plane than by car.
Our current speed's around 200 kilometers per hour. Actually a little bit slower than usual due to some headwinds, but still, a little bit quicker than the cars that are going 130, 140 on the Autobahn.
But if you take into account that a plane just goes in a straight line, taking the shortest road and not wasting time on traffic detours and so on, it's safe to say that planes are about 3 times faster than cars.
I've done many routes both by plane and by car, and the difference in time is substantial. When you drive, you might only see trees around you for half an hour, but here, it's the same trees, but with the added view where you can see 20 kilometers around you, which is definitely a bonus.
Despite all that, a light aircraft isn't as comfy as a car, so traveling might be a bit more tiring at times.
How are you feeling? Tired?
Not really.
Would you like to stop for a coffee? We have 30 minutes until we get to Avignon. Quick break wouldn't hurt.
Are you offering me to land for a coffee break? Yep, we just landed for a coffee break, guys. Why? Because we can. Crazy. We landed for a coffee at the Valréas-Visan airport, which also has its aero club and even a small aviation museum. Andrew had to make some work calls while I was exploring the local hangars. Now, the most interesting bit. We used their runway to land, had a rest, drank some coffee, and paid nothing for it. Not a single cent.
Look, it's a community thing. Local pilots come to our airport too, and they also get treated hospitably. We're all friends.
Anyway, this is lovely. So, after having some coffee, we took back off to the skies. I forgot to mention that private pilots have some harmless tricks up their sleeves, such as so-called low pass. It's when you fly at high speed very low to the ground without touching it. When I asked why you would do that, Andrew said, and I quote, to chase the birds away. So we pulled out our lasers and went for the birds above Lyon airport. Dude, this is scary, the trees! I didn't sign up for this. 30 minutes later, we touched down in Provence. Unfortunately, our freebies ended here in Avignon, since we had to pay 18 euros for landing and parking. Look, a day of parking costs 18 euros at this airport, while you would probably pay 5 to 7 euros per hour to leave your car somewhere in the city. Here it's 18 euros per day. Quite a difference. The best thing about aviation in Europe, and especially France, is that the infrastructure for flying is highly developed here. As you can see, there is a cool restaurant with great food right next to the landing strip. Also, you can rent a car here or call a taxi. Everything is designed so that you can relax right after you land in Provence. Perfect. And as it typically happens in many places in France, you start drinking right from lunch. Is it okay that you drink before flying?
Oh, it's actually encouraged here.
Meaning?
Yeah, 0.5 is acceptable.
Half promille?
Yeah, it used to be 1.2.
No way, 1.2 promille.
Exactly, which is like a bottle of wine.
Wait, but that's a lot. 1.2 gets me wasted.
As long as you don't screw up, you're fine.
We didn't screw up, but I advise you not to drink before driving, regardless of the country. We came to Avignon, the capital of Provence, which is famous for its fields. Let's go and check them out then. This time we drive, though no flight. We rented a car and went to explore what Provence is most famous for. Here they are, the iconic lavender fields of Provence. Beautiful, isn't it? Although there is some problem with this video. It's not mine, I bought it from a stock footage library. I just wanted to show you what lavender fields looks like in blossom. That's how lavender fields typically look in June and even the beginning of July, but as for now, this is what you get. Yeah, not the picture we were hoping for. My initial plan was to come here at the beginning of June, when all these lavender fields were blooming, but then the lockdown happened and I had to postpone my trip. Now it's the middle of August and all that's left is stubble. Oh well. Despite all that, you can't say that the place is short of tourists, as they still flock here to see one of the Provence hallmarks, Cyrenaique Abbey. 13th century architecture is of course great, but it's still a shame that we don't have blooming purple fields in the background instead of these bushes. The thing is that lavender fields don't follow a strict timetable and fully depend on how hot the summer is. Fields at times bloom until the beginning of August or get moved by the middle of July.
I've come here a few times trying to catch the bloom. Every time it's either too soon or too late, just like now.
Damn! Nevertheless, there is no footage that a good colorist can fix. So, this is what it would look like if you're lucky with the time. As for us, we continue our trip through Provence to see the most picturesque village on the region. Besides its beautiful old town with the castle and everything, Gordes also boasts a couple of cute hotels, which take up the old buildings right on the hills. Of course, prices here aren't exactly low. This is definitely not for traveling on a budget, so we need to find something cheaper. Luckily, we have our private plane for that. Oh my god, it feels so nice saying it. We just took off, and would you just look at these golden hour views with the sun slowly rolling down the horizon. The romance of aviation is really growing on me right now, although nothing comes easy, as you know. Our GoPro just got blown off the right wing, and I even saw it happening. Too bad, especially given that I bought a new 70-euro case for it some 2 hours ago.
Shit happens.
When I was talking about finding a cheaper place, this is what I meant. We also happened to meet some amazing people at this Aero Club who had never met us before, but they said something along the lines of, guys, we'll keep the hangar open for our night so you can take a shower at any time. Also, feel free to grab some beers from the fridge. Needless to say, we did grab some beers and left some money for it in a designated box. This whole aviation brotherhood is just something else, but to tell you the truth, I love it. Morning. I finally have some time to tell you about our current location. We are about 50 kilometers from Marseille in southern France at the Vignon aerodrome. Turns out it's a fascinating place too. First of all, 5 or 6 kilometers to my right there is a top secret object which you can't fly over. It's the largest thermonuclear experimental reactor in the world called ITER. It's a massive project worth tens of billions of dollars, and if they succeed with their experiments, that should provide humanity with an inexhaustible source of cheap and green energy in a few decades. I wish them luck. Apart from it all, Vignon Airport itself boasts the largest gliding club in France. More about it coming up. Honestly, it came as a surprise to us too, but Vignon turned out to be the mecca for gliding, attracting fans not only from France but also Germany, Switzerland and Austria. And before we delve into its uniqueness, let's find out what gliding is all about. A glider is an aircraft without an engine, but with a quite a wide wingspan of over 10 meters, turning walking around one into a challenge. Due to this design feature, gliders must be kept in special hangars, and transporting it to the landing strip is a challenge of its own. Gliding is a super popular sport here, with an air club, of course, where I met Dima from Kyiv, who's lived in France since 2011 and works as an instructor pilot. Dima flies gliders, planes and even helicopters, which begs a logical question. What's the difference between all of them?
The difference between a plane and a glider is kind of like the difference between a motorboat and a sailboat. You jump on the plane, turn the engine on, and off you go. The engine does all the hard work. As for gliders, though, it's kind of like playing chess with nature. It's the aerial version of chess in a way.
To make sense of these words, let's figure out what requires for a glider to fly. Firstly, thermal streams. The sun heats up the Earth, and the Earth releases warm air that provides gliders with lifting force. And this is key to Vignon's uniqueness because it has over 300 sunny days in a year. You can fly as much as you want. Another critical factor of gliding is the so-called glide ratio. In short, it's a distance a plane can travel horizontally with its engines off while losing a meter in altitude. Our plane has a glide ratio of 1 to 9, translating to 9 meters of horizontal travel distance by losing 1 meter in altitude. Meanwhile, a glider's ratio is 1 to 70, allowing for 70 meters of travel with 1 meter of lost altitude. As you can see, gliding is all about searching for ascending airstreams that lift you up and let you glide. But for all this, you need to take off first. Here goes a logical question. How do you do that with no engine? Of course, with the help of tow plane. You attach a glider with a tow rope to the plane, which in turn speeds up and tows up your long-winged aircraft. After gaining altitude, the tow plane releases the rope and you start gliding. What's most surprising is that gliders can fly very long distances. I thought that you just have to remain within a fixed area and that's it, but in reality you can fly thousands of kilometers on this thing. I've just met a guy who flew to Austria and back last week in a glider, which is at least 1,000 kilometers or even more. You spend nothing on fuel, you just need someone to lift you up and then it just airstreams and wind and you fly. The latest gliding record was set by two Frenchmen in the 90s when they completed a non-stop flight from Avignon to Morocco, which is 3,000 kilometers. A glider flight can take up lots of time spent in the air, lasting 8, 10 and even 12 hours. Pardon my question, but what if you need to go to the bathroom?
Ooh, it's something that can indeed be resolved. But for men, it's a lot easier than for women. Actually, men can just use a plastic bottle. It's the most simple solution, but women have a little different fix to the problem. They usually have to resort to diapers.
I mean, no wonder they might need diapers, given these mind-blowing views. Dima invited me for a test flight on a glider, but unfortunately, I can't make it today. We are running out of time and must go on with our flight. We took off towards Cannes and immediately the skies met us with some pretty heavy turbulence, making it impossible to film. Not sure if the camera captures it, but it's rocking wild. I guess these are the thermal stream that gliders used to fly.
Yeah, that's right. There are lots of them over here. We basically jump from one thermal to another, which is like a rough gravel road in a way. Look how it's pushing us up. I'm not even touching the yoke and we're going 1k feet per minute.
So, tell you the truth, it's hard to call these flights as comfortable as in a car when it's so shaken without any air condition. But then again, it's only a 25-minute flight to Cannes compared to 2 hours or so by car, with traffic included.
It's going to be even less than 25 minutes because we got a strong tailwind right now. I bet we'll save 7 or 8 minutes since we're flying 1.5 times faster than usual. So, compared to driving, I prefer this instead. 15 minutes of turbulent flight, yeah, it's still better than 3 hours of traffic if you ask me.
10 minutes later, we safely landed in Cannes. The funny thing is that the turbulence was so intense that I scratched the windscreen with my camera a bit, and I even thought that it cracked at first, but it turned out to be just a scratch. It was quite intense actually.
I think it's pretty standard for this region.
Oh, come on, dude, I don't even want to hear about it. Just admit that it was intense. Actually, we didn't pay for this room. Instead, Andrew used his travel points to get it for us. Yes, that's possible.
Every time you stay at a specific chain of hotels, they assign points to you for every euro you spend. Given how much traveling I do for work, I do manage to save quite a bit by the end of each year.
Does it mean that you never pay for hotels?
No, not when I travel with family.
That's cool.
Those are my work dividends.
Here's a story not for the faint-hearted. One of Andrew's colleagues saved up so many points that he can now live in hotels 2 years in a row. Yeah, no need to rent an apartment, he can just chill in hotels with such views for 2 years. Dude, is your company hiring right now? Let's move on to Nice. Instead of strolling around local beaches, I decided to do something different, but not less interesting. We're now going to meet someone who works with the people unfazed by the current hard times in Nice.
Something came out of the sky, picked the building up above him, and tore it out of the ground.
Welcome to the port of Nice, where we're meeting with Katya. She is a yacht broker. After a quick check of parked yachts, I was eager to ask the main question. So how much?
Well, let's see. For example, we have a 2019 40-meter boat. It's called Exodus, and its weekly rent is €190,000, and that's without taxes and other expenses.
Wait, did you just say per week?
Correct.
You mean it costs €190,000 per week?
Yep, that's right. Plus, you should add 10 to 20% VAT, which is a must. Also, there's a 30% deposit on other expenses like fuel, food, drinks.
And people do rent it?
There aren't enough boats. Strange, right? Well, what can you do? The boat I just mentioned isn't even the most expensive one. And today, we are lucky to see another one that costs $1 million per week.
This is Phoenix 2, a 90-meter yacht that fits only 12 passengers and 28 crews. It has a small helipad, spa, elevator, swimming pool, cinema, gym, and God knows what else. Unfortunately, we couldn't get in. I wanted to see what these yachts are like inside and what people pay $200,000 per week for, but even though we had been planning this for 15 days, Katya didn't manage to find something for us because all the yachts are now rented out, so there is no way for us to get inside. Rich life is something else, but I doubt I'll ever be able to understand those who pretty much spend a chunk of a small African country's annual budget on a week's yacht rent. It's just beyond me, really. Actually, I'm not a big fan of crowded resort cities with lots of transport and people. I prefer something more quiet, something like the place we're flying to next.
Ready.
As we are going to fly over water, the flight rules specify that we must wear these life jackets, which I suppose are a little different from the standard ones. They look like this. Of course, we couldn't leave for Corsica without flying one more time over the French Riviera to enjoy how it all looks from above. The Côte d'Azur is looking outstanding from above. It takes about an hour from the south of France to Corsica, so we had a quick snack, and since there is nothing interesting over the sea, we started to gain altitude. Apparently in aviation, the higher you go, the better it is.
First of all, it's better because it's safer as you increase your glide range. Secondly, we fly faster thanks to thin air. And thirdly, fuel consumption is more efficient. See this green circle here? Shows our glide radius, just in case the engine dies out on us.
So, the higher we fly, the safer it is.
Exactly.
30 minutes later, the Corsican mountains started to loom on the horizon.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain speaking. We are now currently approaching Corsica. The weather in Calvi pretty good. We expecting landing in about half an hour. Have a good flight.
All right, we're in Corsica. We decided to camp right at the end of the runway. There is sea right next to us, so we made an impulsive decision and put out our stuff. Andrew's now taking the plane to its parking spot, so let's see what we make of it. Back when we were planning this trip and dreaming about camping right next to runways, it was something very similar to this place I had in my mind. It turned out to be an airfield near the southern town of Propriano in Corsica. This is where the puzzle was completed. The tents, the runway where we landed, our plane somewhere nearby, and the sea, of course, that you can't see yet. It was at this moment that I realized how fantastic traveling on a private plane is, because you end up in places you would never visit by car or on foot.
Searchlights just for us. Slip sliding, colliding, dancing in the dark. I'm in, you in.
A very windy but extremely beautiful morning. Yeah, the morning was magnificent. We quickly packed up and took off the capital of Corsica called Ajaccio. There we rented a car and went sightseeing. Now let's figure out what we know about Corsica. First and foremost, it's Napoleon Bonaparte, and that's his statue in the back. Born in Corsica, Napoleon remains the main local hero. There is graffiti with his face around ATMs, hotels, taverns, and galleries named after him. And of course, the local airport bears his name too. France regards Corsica as its autonomous region, but not all locals agree with that. You often come across FNLC graffiti on buildings, which stands for the National Liberation Front of Corsica. It's a separatist organization that advocates for Corsica's separation from France. They put up corresponding posters on the streets and paint over French writings on road signs, leaving only Corsican ones. Another thing Corsica is famous for is the local mafia. The mafia is a real thing, and just so you know, the word vendetta, which we all know, originates from Corsica. Remarkably, the local mafia deeply cares about saving the island in its pristine state. A few years ago, there was an interesting incident here. At the time, some hotels chains entered Corsica, planning to build their standard large building blocks with rooms, turning Corsica into something like Turkey. Suddenly, the construction sites of those hotels started to explode at night, and those explosions were organized by the mafia to keep the island's true aesthetics. Actually, if you go to Corsica now, you'll notice that the island has hardly changed for the last 50 years or so. I don't just mean the Corsican architecture with its tiny towns scattered across the hills. I'm talking about their traditions and Corsica's national identity as well. To find out more, we've met with Oля and Alex, who live here.
I was born in Marseille, and then I moved to Corsica because it's where my parents are from. So I was eager to pass the tradition to my son, and also the culture and everything else.
Corsicans traditionally value family ties. For example, Alex left Marseille and bought a house in the same village where his grandparents were buried. Alex is a big fan of Corsica, and since he knows all the interesting spots on the island, we decided to visit a genuine Corsican village. This is traditional Corsican mountain village called Penta di Casinca. It has a population of around 3,000 people, and it's hard to call it a tourist destination. Here we met Pierre Jean, who kindly invited us to his family house, passed on from generation to generation. Just check out the year it was built. I'm actually amazed at how Corsicans honor their ancestor traditions and how important family is to them. You can find it in many other cultures, but here you can practically feel it. The house has a bunch of rooms where all the relics of his family are stored, starting from the portrait of Pierre Jean's grandfather and other relatives, and ending with family utensils and books. A real family museum.
As Jean-Pierre said, we've just seen the formal side of the house, and now we are moving to the area where some of the less glamorous relics are housed.
The proletarian part absolutely stunned me. Some 50 years ago the family lived here, and nothing has changed since then, including the 1973 calendar on the wall. The fireplace used to be right in the middle of the room, resulting in walls covered in soot and bits of smoked sausage that they made here. I'm actually shocked that this room hasn't been redecorated. It would be logical to utilize this room somehow, but instead the room serves as a reminder of the old days. Now, after a short ethnography session and chatting with the locals, let's do some sightseeing. We have driven through the south of Corsica, and here are the 3 most memorable spots we saw. Let's start with the mountains. The first place is a mountain pass called Aguiles de Bayella, with its massive spikes on red granite and absolutely stunning views. This place is not just famous among hikers, but rock climbers too. We're smoothly moving from the mountains to the main reason why people visit Corsica, namely the sea and the beaches, which automatically get a 10 out of 10. And the color of the water in some parts, like near the island of Piana, is very similar to the Maldives. Sorry for this cheesy comparison. The water in Corsica is gorgeous, which shouldn't be surprising considering that we are only some 10 kilometers away from Sardinia, which so many adore. You can even see it from here. That dark spot on the horizon is the mountains of Sardinia. Still, neither I nor Andrew even touched this turquoise water because instead we decided to see the most beautiful city in the south of Corsica, the city of Bonifacio. When you walk around the streets, there isn't actually much the difference Bonifacio from other old towns in Europe, but this is the case when we should take a look at this town from the outside. Bonifacio is built on the very top of limestone rock. Its houses hang almost 70 meters above the sea. There is even a small bay that welcomes ferries from Sardinia, as well as regular beautiful boats. This is a super picturesque city and a great place to stop over and chill for a day. There is just one issue with Bonifacio though. You can only see its full beauty either from a boat or a plane. Or a drone if you have one. Exploring Corsica in just 2 days turned out to be an impossible task, so we honestly failed it. The weather was getting worse on our route, which made us urgently return home before we got stuck here. Nevertheless, Andrew promised to make up for this with a little surprise. This takeoff from the small unpaved airfield was the scariest one of this whole trip. We got off the ground at the very last moment and we were really close to the trees. The captain though reassured me later that everything was under control. I should say that after 5 days of our plane trip, I'm starting to feel much more confident in this passenger seat. I now understand Andrew's actions and how the plane reacts when it goes through mountains or thermal streams. I think that all our fears about flying come mainly from the lack of understanding of the mechanics behind it. The more you learn, the more confident you get. And then you start feeling comfortable as you realize the plane's behavior. The more you fly, the less scary it gets. I guess this formula works. The surprise I was talking about is that we'll be flying over the Swiss Alps, and if we get lucky with the weather and the clouds, we'll even get to orbit around my favorite mountain where I stayed for a night in Switzerland. It's the Matterhorn. I'm really hoping we'll make it there because the views are already astonishing. To fly over the Alps, which are pretty high as you know, we had to gain altitude up to 4,200 meters. What's most interesting is that thermal streams pushed us up to the altitude. We already know what those are. Otherwise, this specific plane wouldn't be able to fly so high. The streams push us up and here we are, flying towards the Matterhorn, whose peak should roughly be at our altitude. The only problem is that we can't remain at this altitude for more than 30 minutes, because that's when oxygen deprivation sets in, which might lead to mountain sickness, which is quite serious. I think I'm starting to feel mountain sickness already. I'm getting that feeling of lightheadedness and dizziness. Although I'm not sure if it's from the lack of oxygen or the impeccable views. They are just melting my brain. Well, I think I can see it. And there it was, in the distance. This absolutely outstanding mountain, almost 4,500 meters tall, which we flew a victory lap around. Now, when the Matterhorn is behind us, I'm feeling a sense of closure in everything mountain related. Just look how beautiful.
See that glacier on the left in the distance?
Yeah?
Some guys crazy enough to fly in on their ski planes and they try to land on it.
That's crazy. The surprises didn't stop there, though, because we reached Mont Blanc, the highest mountain in the Alps and all of Europe, if we don't count the Caucasus Mountains.
Check out that UFO-looking thing up on the top.
Okay, yeah, I see.
It's a refuge for all the climbers who go up Mont Blanc.
Our flight through the Alps turned out even better than I expected. The weather, the sunset, pure magic. And some 30 minutes later, we landed at the French aerodrome Annemasse, just a couple of kilometers away from Geneva. Wow, what a spectrum of emotions, ranging from excitement and light fear to the indescribable beauty of the mountains, which I had never experienced from this new angle. Wow, this definitely is a great day, as well as the whole trip. Well, 6 days of our plane traveling are over, and now on to the part that probably interested you the most. The numbers. For 6 days of the plane rental, including all aviation fees, parking and fuel, we paid 2,000 euros. It's important that there were just 2 of us, and if you split this cost in 4, because there were 4 seats on the plane, you would ended up with 500 euros per person, which isn't too bad. If we compare this to a road trip by car, it would have taken us over 2 days to cover the same distance by car, while it only took us 13 hours and 30 minutes by plane, which is nearly 4 times quicker. As an example, it takes 2.5 hours to fly from here to Cannes and 8 hours and 30 minutes to get there by car. And just imagine how exhausted you would be after driving this long of a distance. While after 2 hours on the plane, after experience all that on my own, I can surely say that I feel fresh and energized. I could even hop in a car and drive somewhere. All in all, traveling by plane is like a new perspective of travel, and it's an incredibly interesting one, because you don't drive through places, but fly over them, discovering the world from a new angle. Personally, I was glad to experience all the romance of such traveling. Sleepovers at airfields, dining all those nearby restaurants, it's such a magical thing to feel all that. This trip didn't even require a large budget, since we slept in tents and didn't spend much on restaurants and hotels. It was quite a budget trip, and that's amazing too. Well, I'm really ecstatic, and it makes me think that I would definitely like to do it again, but taking a different route this time, and maybe even more than once. Still though, as you know, it's not really about how you travel, but whether you do it. Travel because it's still really worth it. As for me, I think I will stay here in this beautiful Swiss village for another day to relax and then get to my next destination. See you guys!